Okay, we've got 3 sub-assemblies to put together first before reassembling everything around the main shaft. We've got the ring gear assembly, we've got the driver assembly, and the planet gear assembly. Right, first up the ring gear. Fairly straightforward. Clutch just over the splines, and then this little retaining clip just slides over like so. It's all bedded in. Perfect. And then just drag this round until it sits in this retaining groove here. There you go. Same arrangement on the back. So anyway, that's the ring gear assembly, back in one piece, clean as a clean thing. And let's move on now to the driver. Driver body, which has a race for this small bearing assembly or cage. 2, 4, 6, 7 little bearings in there. A little retaining cap and a spring for the driver. Now, I'm reliably informed by a bearing specialist in the aerospace industry who specialises in bearings for turbines that the amount of grease that you actually pack in here is, rule of thumb, 1/3 of the volume of the space that the bearings rotate within. Now, the reason you don't want to overpack this is that for an arrangement like this, where we're not talking about a cassette bearing, we're talking about bearings that are retained by a cup and cone mechanism, the majority of the friction is from the bearing interaction with the lubricant, in this case grease. The more grease you put in, the more friction. Just a friendly amount, just to get some grease in amongst. Oops, there's one that's popped out. Now that is not supposed to happen. To me, that is an indication of this being worn. That just slipped right back in there. Bearings back in. Just seat them nice and square. That's fine. Okay, that is the driver assembly with spring. So some hub gears have different numbers of planet gears. This particular one has 3. I think the Stormy Archer ones have 4, but this particular one has 3. They're simple retaining pins that form the axle for each of these planet gears. So there's no screwing mechanism, they just drop in place to hold the planet gear in position. There's some wear on the top and bottom of these, and it's nice and shiny where the planet gear's just been going round and round. I'll return these pins into the positions they were in. It's the short piece of wear is facing upwards, the deeper piece facing down. I'll just show you how to put those back in. So this is the body itself. It was absolutely caked with crap, with grit, gunk, all been held in place with the grease, and it was just providing this unholy mess between the planet gears, which sit in these wee chambers here, and the sun gear, which sits on the axle, the main axle, right there. So it really needed to be stripped down this much in order to get that cleaned out. So let's get it back together, fairly straightforward. Just position the gear in the chamber and then drop the pin through, and that's it. Help draw it in. Sitting on top of that is a simple little disc which hosts another retaining spring and another pair of pawls. It's idiot proof in terms of which way it goes on. This was another piece where there was just so much crap caked in there, and that's some corrosion that just has been worn in by crap over the years. It's quite gritty at the top there. That side's really smooth by comparison. This particular cup here, retaining cup for the pole, is just a bit of a mess, but it is where it is. Okay, so that is up. These notches are facing down, and I'm going to opt for having this little flick up lip here of the spring facing up. That's it. Now the poles are symmetric in this case, so there's no up, there's no down, there's just facing the right way. There you go, that's one. And that's the other. Planetary gears doing their thing. Oh, happy days. Okay. Simply hold the show together. Right, let's talk about grease versus oil. So as I mentioned previously, there was a ton of gunk in various places within the housing here for the gears, and stuck in behind the pawls. That meant the pawls weren't returning freely, and there was just basically a perfect catchment arrangement going on of grease holding grit. So the lubrication I'm using for the planet gears is oil applied to the little axles, the retaining pins, and a little bit to the upper faces and lower faces of the planet gears. And I've rotated those quite a bit just to draw the oil in. There's going to be some grease on the gear face of the sun gear, which sits right in the middle here. That's going to be sufficient to help keep things moving sweetly between those gear faces. I'm not going to apply grease here at this face. The amount of oil that I've applied here is minimal as well. It's just enough to keep the spring happy in terms of basically heading off any risk of rust. and I really just want enough oil sitting behind the pawls to allow them to move freely, but not enough to retain grit as and when any dirt comes into the equation. Now we've got the main axle with the sun gear sitting right in the middle of it. And just to recap, we've reassembled the ring gear with its clutch housing, and within there's the indicator pin or the selector. The driver with the greased up bearings. Those are the old bearings that were in there, but cleaned, re-greased. It wasn't too bad, but while there, you know, it was a good idea to just give it a clean out, get some new grease in there. And the planet gear housing. Nice and clean, poles all lubed up nicely. Thrust washer in position. Retaining circlip holding it all together, all good. And that is all I'm putting on there. You'll see in other videos, people slather it on, what's one guy doing it with a toothbrush. That's not going to be happening here. Now, obviously I've taken the selector pin out here so that this can fit onto the main shaft, like so. And that's that. Lovely new bearing from Germany. I'll loop that up just at the end. Now on top of the ring gear, there's a plate that has a small groove, and that groove is there to guide and host the spring for the driver. Like so. Sits like so. Now, surprisingly, there was no retaining cap. There was no top cap for the spring to sit between the top of the spring and the cone that goes on top. So you can see here, shaft, some gear with a bit of grease on it, and the ring gear. Just waiting for what I'm about to put in between those two is the planet gear housing. Now this washer is idiot proof. It has a flat on one side that goes all the way down this side of the shaft. So that circlip is nicely in place now. Poles are free moving. All sounds good. So that is the drive side of a hub shell. That's the race that I'm going to pack with a third volume grease. So that's that packed with about a third volume grease. I'm the same 1/3 volume for the non-drive side. Another nice new set of bearings to go in non-drive side. The cone, it's a bit skanky, seen better days, but there's loads of evidence of rust, as you can see. So there's definitely been water ingress making its way into the non-drive side, which led to the failing of the bearing on that side.